Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today's October 4th, 2024. The Mind Bomb, photos that led to a global whaling ban. A 1977 image of a whale being harpooned by a Russian vessel was among a series of whaling photos from Greenpeace which shocked the world. In the 1970s, a small group of Greenpeace activists had a unique idea for how they could put an end to commercial whaling. A large Soviet vessel, harpooned gun poised to fire, looms over a whale immediately below the bow, the animal's large gaping wound oozing blood into the cold Pacific Ocean. It's an image that changed the world and marked the beginning of Greenpeace's Mind Bomb campaign, says Rex Weiler, the photographer behind the 1975 photo. Weiler was among the early members of Greenpeace who met in Canada during the 1970s. Many of them, including Weiler, had left the U.S. to escape being drafted for the Vietnamese War. It's so hard to imagine today, but at the time there was no ecology movement, he remembers. There was a peace movement, and we felt there was needed to be a conservation movement on the same scale as those. We were ripped up inside. I recall being on the deck of the main Greenpeace boat and looking out across the water and feeling gut-wrenched, Rex Weiler. Weiler found out about the plight of whales through a Canadian author during a book tour at the time. At the time, people thought whaling was this Moby Dick image. Little men in these little boats facing these giant whales. The whales were Goliath, he says. We wanted to flip the Goliath image around because by the 1970s, whales had giant boats with fast diesel motors and exploding 250-pound harpoons, and we wanted to capture that image. Whaling peaked in the 1960s, and approximately 80,000 whales being hunted every year. Hunting technology had advanced, and whalers had harpoons in ships that could outrun the whales. Despite various whaling protection measures being introduced, including the International Agreement of the Regulation of Whaling in 1937, some countries, such as Russia and Japan, ignored them and caught whales illegally. Between 1900 and 1999, an estimated 2.9 million large whales were caught and killed by the industrial whaling operations, although the actual numbers are believed to be much higher. Already in the 1960s, the rapid decline of whale stocks worldwide was clear, says Arne Finneson, chair of the Iceland Nature Conservation Association and lifelong ocean activist who worked for Greenpeace Sweden in the early 1990s. Although the hunt for blue whales in the North Atlantic was banned by the International Whaling Commission in 1954. The management structure was weak and the excessive whaling continued. In 1972, Finneson explains the UN Conference on the Human Environment called for a 10-year moratorium on whaling. The IWC regarded this call by the international community, and Greenpeace took action at sea in order to protect this ruthless exploitation, notably against Soviet whales vessels in the Pacific, he says. The newly formed Greenpeace had spent 2 or 3 years preparing the boat and a crew in 1975. We set out in our little Zodiac inflatable boats to find a whaling fleet. Weiler says the whole idea of our campaigns was that time was media. So we decided we were going to blockade the whaling boats and get between the whales and the harpoon. So off we go, looking for whalers, and we found the Russian whaling fleet off the coast of California. Environmentalists demonstrate near the White House in 1988 against Japan's whaling fleet. Many of the group had some experience with the media, and they knew they needed striking photos for this confrontation to become a global news story. They soon termed these kinds of campaigns mind bombs, an idea that would become the cornerstone of Greenpeace campaigning, Weiler explains. The mind bomb, something dreamt up by Bob Hunter, another early member of Greenpeace, revolved around the media being a global delivery system for ideas. Revolution wasn't an armed struggle, according to Hunter. It was a communication struggle, where mind bombs were the weapons rather than actual bombs. We knew we had to take photos. We knew it had to be dramatic. That was the whole purpose of making the dramatic gesture, to record it so this would become a news story, and we could talk about the plight of the world's whales, says Weiler. But it wasn't easy. We all had to learn how to take photographs and shoot films from a small moving boat on a choppy sea, he said. We stood at the bow of the Zodiac with a line around our waist to secure us. We could lean back against the line and kind of become our own tripod and absorb the movement of the boat so we could hold the camera steady. Catching the whales on camera was the biggest challenge. They were being chased by harpoon boats so they would rise to the surface, breathe out, breathe in, and dive again. There wasn't much to photograph, Weiler adds, until the whales had been hit by a harpoon. My awareness was mostly focused on exposure shutter speeding. With those things, he says, it was only after he put down his camera that what he had witnessed hit him. It was devastating. We had never seen anything like it. We saw the whaling boats, harpoon whales. There was massive amounts of blood in the water, and whales flapping and splashing as they struggled and then died. We were ripped up inside. I recall being on the deck of the main Greenpeace boats and looking out across the water and feeling gut-wrenched, devastated by the reality of what we had just witnessed. When the crew landed on the port in San Francisco, the dock was swamped with media. Weiler recalls, we weren't prepared for that kind of response. Everybody wanted the images. Weiler remembers waking up early the next morning and going to a newsstand to see if his image had made the papers. I was so excited because I was wondering if we'd made it, and I walked the streets until I found a newsstand, and the photograph was on the front page of virtually every newspaper. It was a stunning moment. It had been our dream. For Weiler, the point of the photographs was to show protesters not just standing up for human rights or peace, but for other species. Change comes when the population insists on it, he says, and we were attempting to inspire the population to rise up to say to the government, we have to preserve these species. I feel that in many ways this particular image really helped create the global climate movement we have today. After Greenpeace's whaling campaign, a moratorium on commercial whaling was finally implemented by the International Whaling Committee in 1982. Followed by a ban in 1985. As a result, some of the bigger whaling species, such as humpbacks, have made a remarkable recovery to 93% of their pre-industrial hunting populations. Commercial whaling does still happen though, namely by Iceland, Norway, and Japan. Greenpeace's actions inspired the public, Finnison says, and in 1982, Greenpeace and other nonprofits were instrumental in achieving a moratorium on commercial whaling, which still stands. 23andMe is on the brink. What happens to all its DNA data? Shanette Wiles, 27, poses for a portrait at her home on Wednesday in Chicago. Wiles took a 23andMe test over the summer and got her results in September. While she finds the data breach concerning, so much of our data is already out there, she said. Last month, Shanette Wiles finally got around to it. The 27-year-old traveling nurse spit into a tube and mailed it to 23andMe. where the genetic testing company's lab examined her DNA and generated a glimpse of her ancestry. One of the reasons I decided to get the test is that as an African American, it's very common for our heritage to get lost, said Wiles, who lives in Chicago. Once her results arrived in the mail, it revealed that she was nearly 40% Nigerian, which is exciting and cool to see, she said, because I always thought I had cousins who were from West Africa. After 23andMe contacted her regularly about signing up for add-on services or to have relatives take the test, but she wasn't interested. The one-and-done nature of Wiles' experience is indicative of a core business problem with the high-flying biotech company that is now teetering on the brink of collapse. Wiles and many of the 23andMe's 15 million other customers never returned. They paid once for a saliva kit, then moved on. Shares of 23andMe are now worth pennies. The company's valuation has plummeted 99% from its $6 billion peak shortly after the company went public in 2021. As 23andMe struggles for survival, customers like Wiles have one pressing question. What is the company's plan for all the data it has collected since it was founded in 2006? I absolutely think this has to be clarified. Wiles said, the company has undergone so many changes and so much turmoil that they need to figure out what they're doing as a company. But when it comes to my genetic data, I really want to know what they plan on doing. What will 23andMe do with the DNA data of 15 million customers? Andy Kill, a spokesperson for 23andMe, would not comment on what the company might do with its trove of genetic data beyond general pronouncements about its commitment to privacy. For our customers, our focus continues to be on transparency and choice over how they want their data to be managed, he said. When signing up for the service, about 80% of the 23andMe's customers have opted into having their genetic data analyzed for medical research. This rate has held steady for many years, Kill added. The company has an agreement with pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK, that allows the drug maker to tap the tech company's customer data to develop new treatments for disease. Anya Prince, a law professor at the University of Iowa's College of Law who focuses on genetic privacy, said those worried about their sensitive data may not realize just how federal protections exist. For instance, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA, does not apply to 23andMe since it is a company outside of healthcare realm. She said, HIPAA does not protect data that's held by direct-to-consumer companies like 23andMe. Although DNA has no federal safeguards, some states like California and Florida do give customers rights over their genetic information. Although DNA data has no federal safeguards, some states like California and Florida do give customers rights over their genetic information. Customers are really worried. they could ask for samples to be withdrawn from these databases under those laws, said Prince. According to the company, all of its genetic data is anonymized, meaning there is no way for GSK or any other third party to connect the sample to a real person. However, could make it nearly impossible for a customer to renege on their decision to allow researchers to access their DNA data. I couldn't go to GSK and say, hey, my sample was given to you. I want that taken out. If it was anonymized, right? Because they're not going to re-identify it just to pull it out of the database, Prince said. 23andMe will not let law enforcement search its database. Vera Edelman, staff attorney with American Civil Liberties Union, who specializes in privacy and technology privacy, said the patchwork of state laws governing DNA data makes the genetic data of millions potentially vulnerable to being sold off or even mined by law enforcement. Having to rely on a private company's terms of service or bottom line to protect that kind of information is troubling, particularly when the level of interest we've seen from government actors in accessing such information during criminal investigations, Edelman said. She points out how investigators use genealogy website to identify the man known as the Golden State Killer, and how police homed in on an Idaho murder suspect by turning two similar databases of genetic profiles. This has happened without people's knowledge, much less their express consent, Edelman said. Neither case relied on 23andMe, and spokesperson Kill said the company does not allow law enforcement to search its database. The company has, however, received subpoenas to access its genetic information. According to 23andMe's transparency report, authorities have sought genetic data on 15 individuals since 2015. But the company has resisted the requests and never produced data for investigators. We treat law enforcement inquiries, such as a valid subpoena or court order, with the utmost seriousness. We also use legal measures to resist any and all requests in order to protect our customers' privacy, Kill says. Board resigns after split with CEO Wojcicki. Two recent developments have added even more fuel to privacy concerns. Last year, the company was hit with a major data breach that said it had affected 6.9 million customers' accounts, including about 14,000 who had their passwords stolen. And earlier this month, 23andMe's board of directors and the company's CEO had a dramatic falling out after chief executive Ann Wojcicki proposed a plan to purchase all of the company's outstanding shares herself and take the company private. The board pushed back and eventually resigned en masse. In a public letter to Wojcicki, the board member said they will still back the company's mission. They cannot support Wojcicki. They wrote that they have been waiting months for her to detail a plan for the company's future, but it has yet to arrive, which leads us to believe no such proposal is coming. In September, filing to financial regulators, Wojcicki wrote, "I remain committed to our customers' privacy and pledge meaning the company's rules requiring consent for DNA to be used for research would remain in place, as well as following customers to delete their data. Wojcicki added that she is no longer considering offers to buy the company and previously saying she was. Some analysis predicted that 23andMe would go out of business by next year, barring bankruptcy proceeding that could potentially restructure the company. And for customers like Wiles, the wait is a little unnerving. She opted out of allowing her data to be studied. Sometimes about that causes me a bit of pause, she said. But the company's rickety status, she said, I hope my genetic data isn't misused in some way. I do wonder what exactly they intend to do with it all. A tiny town just got slammed by Helene. It could massively disrupt the tech industry. Hurricane Helene dropped more than 2 feet of rain on Spruce Pine, North Carolina. The town is home to one of the world's only sources of high-purity quartz, which is used to manufacture silicone chips and solar panels. A tiny town in North Carolina that's just been devastated by Hurricane Helene could end up severely disrupting the global supply chain for microchips and solar panels. Nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, the company of Spruce Pine, population 2,194, is known for its hiking, local artists, and as America's sole source of high-purity quartz. Helene dumped more than 2 feet of rain on the town, destroying roads, shops, cutting power and water. But it will likely be far felt beyond the small community. Semiconductors are the brains of every computer chip-enabled device, and solar panels are a key part of the global push to combat climate change. To make both semiconductors and solar panels, companies need crucibles and other equipment that can both withstand extraordinarily high heat and be kept absolutely clean. One material fits the bill: quartz. Pure quartz. Quartz that comes overwhelmingly from spruce pine. As far as we know, there's only a few places in the world that have ultra high quality quartz. According to Ed Conway, author of Material World, the 6 raw materials that shape modern civilization. Russia and Brazil also supply high quality quartz, he says. But spruce pine has far and away the largest amounts and highest quality. Conway says that without super pure quartz for the crucibles, which can often be used only a single time, it would be impossible to produce most semiconductors. Purity really does matter, he says. You're talking about a process to create the silicone wafers that later become silicone chips, where one single atom being in the wrong place could derail production. Companies have been pursuing artificial substitutes, but so far those alternatives can't satisfy the world's demand for this pure quartz. According to the annual report from TECHCET, a market research firm, quartz equipment is a $2.12 billion industry and growing. What's unfolding in spruce pine isn't just a local emergency. Like many climate disasters, it has economic costs that could ripple around the world. Helene devastates town. Spruce pine received 24.12 inches of rain from Helene. According to the National Weather Service, the massive inundation causing the North Toe River to flood, devastating the downtown area, according to Spencer Bost, the executive director of Downtown Spruce Pine, the local business development association. It's flooded up to the awnings, about 10 feet, he says, of the downtown's lower street, was destroyed. The town's grocery store was also heavily damaged in the flooding. Power, water, and cellular service are all down, Bost says. Fallen trees and washed out roads have left the community isolated from the outside. We were there for about 3 days before we got enough chainsaws together to cut a path out of our neighborhood, Bost says. He and his fiancée spent 9 hours working their way to Greenville, North Carolina, where they've temporarily sought shelter. The conditions of the mines that produce the quartz remain unclear. Operations at our facilities have stopped on September 26 in preparation of the event, and we have no visibility on when they will restart, May Kristen Hagen of the Quartz Corporation told NPR in a statement. A second major supplier, Sibelco, based in Antwerp, Belgium, told NPR its operations have been disrupted since September 26. We are working closely with our local team to safely restart operations as soon as we can, and are actively coordinating with local authorities and other partners to manage the situation, the company said in an email statement. Images verified by NPR show that even if the mines are intact, getting quartz out of the region may be a challenge. The main CSX rail line in and out of Spruce Pines runs along the North Toe River and has been heavily damaged. The rail line was the primary shipping point for quartz from the mines. Fallout will depend on how long disruption lasts. Conway says he believes chip makers have stocks of ultra-pure quartz that could prevent a short-term supply chain disruption from hobbling production. But he adds that if spruce pine remains cut off from the rest of the world for too long, it could have a big impact. Previous disruptions to superconductor supply chains, from earthquakes to fires, have sent ripple effects across to many industries that rely on chips for their products and operations. A 2008 fire at a quartz refinery in Spruce Pine impacted the market. Likewise, solar expert Johannes Byrne, head of the Byrne Research, says that if a disruption went on for more than a few weeks, it would pose a serious problem for the production of silicon ingots needed in the photovoltaic or PV industry. China is a major producer of solar panels, and it relies heavily on imports of high-quality quartz from spruce pine, he says. Lita Sean Roy, the president and CEO of market research from TechKet, has been tracking the supply chain for semiconductors for 2 decades. She says it's amazing that the industry hasn't been more concerned about the vulnerability created from relying on this one region of North Carolina for a crucial material. Every time I've asked in the last 2 decades, the question always comes back, well, where else are we supposed to get it, she says. The United States and China are in a global competition to secure access to raw materials for semiconductors and green technology. Frantic searches are underway for new deposits and new methods across a range of minerals, but when it comes to pure quartz, I haven't heard of any viable sources yet to replace what's in North Carolina, Sean Roy says.
Inside our gut, there's a bustling community of trillions of cells that influence almost every aspect of our health. Welcome to the gut microbiome. It weighs as much as 2 kilograms and is vital for our metabolism and our immune function. A healthy gut microbiome has numerous benefits, such as a stronger immune system, reduced risk of heart disease, diabetes, asthma, and depression. Gut microbes even influence the brain and how we think, while a disrupted microbiome is linked to a range of health issues, including inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, and diabetes. The good news is we can all improve our gut health with a few simple steps. 1. Include a huge variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, pulses, and seeds. 2. Avoid highly processed foods. 3. Introduce probiotics and fermented foods such as sauerkraut and kimchi. 4. Use extra virgin olive oil over other fats, as it has the highest number of microbe-friendly polyphenols. 5. Sleep well, as disrupted sleep can impact your microbiome. Exercise is important too. A new study adds to the growing evidence linking exercise to gut health. Participants completed an intense 9-week cycling program, after which researchers found positive changes to their gut microbiome, though the researchers acknowledged that high-intensity exercise might prompt people to choose healthier foods. In other research done in mice, germ-free rodents were more anxious and less sociable, so it's now believed that cultivating a healthy gut could help with their mental health too, while a study on humans found that a diet high in fermented foods reduced stress. All this shows that it pays to be mindful of feeding the microbes in our gut the foods they need to thrive.